Welcome to Talking Giants presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. And we got an interview with Zack Rosenblatt of NJ.com, who the Apple family are huge fans of. We really talked about the Daboll Schoen pressers mostly in that, so we're probably going to do some... We're actually not going to be talking much about the pressers. I think we're talking about, let's get some ready for some free agency and some draft takes, actually. We're going to talk about Saquon on the offensive line, really, is what we want to talk about. Justin, how are you feeling?
Hey, Bobby Skinner. Yeah, watched the pressers on the train home because I was at the John Boy Media offices today. And specifically hearing Joe Schoen. Brian Daboll didn't really say much of anything. You're going to hear...
He didn't answer anything. It wasn't like he was just boring. He just didn't answer anything.
You're going to hear in the Zack Rosenblatt interview, I don't even know if we asked a direct question about the Daboll presser. It was everything that was related to a presser was Joe Schoen's. I was just thinking today, I know, again, it's only quotes. We're at the part where it's only quotes this part of the offseason. And, the second that Joe Schoen maybe cuts or trades somebody who I like, and I'm like, I really wanted to keep this guy, then maybe it'll be a different story. And the love fest with Joe Schoen might, not going to say it's going to end, but it may be a little bit different. But I like that Joe Schoen is the Giants GM. I really do like him. He is a guy that seems like he has a plan. And, again, only quotes. We'll see how it plays out this draft season, free agency, and how they manage the cap. But even in times where he's working around answers and saying maybe avoiding, he's still talking about different ways in which a team or he can attack things. And we're going to talk about it with the offensive line and how saying about offensive linemen's intangibles. I'm really happy that Joe Schoen is the Giants GM. And I was like, you know what? I like the way that he talks, like the way that he presents stuff. Dave Gettleman's way of presenting that he had a plan was him saying, I have a plan.
Word. It's... Joe Schoen's been a breath of fresh air. I think we're all excited about Joe Schoen.
Just a feeling. Nothing substantial. It's just a feeling that I had as a fan.
Yeah, and it's obviously we gotta it's wait and see as always, but the free agency we kind of know what's happening cut wise, except for one thing. We know something's gonna happen with Blake Martinez. There's gonna have to be a decision made there with and Joe Schoen talked about his contingency plans, and I think Blake Martinez might be the guy who falls into that the most. Guys who have the the rookie salary bump like Julian Love, Darius Slayton, and Caden Smith. Those guys could be moved on from, and we'd understand why. James Bradberry seems like he's gone. I think we've all come to peace with that because we're going to get some trade value out of him. If they just cut James Bradberry, then I would be pissed off. You should have figured out something to get a trade partner with this guy. The one guy who I think we don't know what's going to happen is Saquon Barkley. And he said he's willing to all things. I wouldn't read into that too much, but I'm at a point where I'm just waiting for Saquon Barkley to be traded, Justin. It's still, and we've repeated this take on Mailbag Pause over and over, but there's just no winning situation for keeping Saquon Barkley next season. There's really not. The off chance that he stays healthy for a full season and balls out, then it's okay, well, you have to pay him or you let him walk. And I'm done. Don't talk to me about comp picks. Seriously. Don't talk to me about betting on a comp pick for a guy who hasn't been healthy since 2018 and plays a position where he's not going to get a huge contract even if he plays really well. Teams aren't paying running backs a ton anymore. Every single, especially in free agency, not from your own team. It's one thing to resign your own guys like Dalvin Cook or Christian McCaffrey. Teams are not going to go out in the market and spend a ton of money on a Saquon Barkley, even if he has one really this good year. He is far removed from a good year.
Aren't comp picks shaped around playing time? So you would not only be relying on Saquon Barkley to get paid, number one, you'd be relying on him wherever he goes the next year to play games, which that's not a guarantee.
You can't, and that's the thing with Saquon. If he's healthy can't be a part of the conversation anymore. Saquon Barkley, and again, he can be healthy for 1 year. It's not if he's healthy for every game next year. Is it the wildest thing in the world? No, but 2 years in a row, yes, it would be wild. He hasn't been healthy since 2018. Okay. He has not been healthy since 2018, and even then he had a camp injury. 2019 banged up the whole year, essentially. 2020, the huge injury. 2021 coming off the injury, the sprained ankle. And he plays a position where it just gets worse and worse as time goes on with those guys. They're in a no-win situation. If he plays really well, then you got to pay a running back who's injury prone. That's not a good situation. We shouldn't be paying Saquon Barkley big money, especially in what would be year 2 of a rebuild for this team. Even though Joe Schoen kind of had the same line as Dave Gettleman, as where essentially winning while rebuilding, in different words. If he sucks, then you're letting him walk, or you're re-signing, a bad running back, and he's going to get, and you're giving him more money because of who he is, because who Saquon Barkley is, where he was drafted does matter to the Giants organization and around the league. Like, I just feel like they're in a no-win situation with Saquon Barkley. You can't go with the approach of the trade deadline because, again, there's a better chance than not that he's going to get injured. And who's going to want, who's going to give you more for 8 games of Saquon Barkley compared to 17? Like, who's going to do that? So I just feel like the Giants kind of have to be in the mode of trying to trade Saquon Barkley. Now, listen, if the only thing they could get is a 6th or a 7th, would I personally think about doing it? I would, because he has that $7 million dead cap. But I would be somewhat understandable of not doing it. But they should be shopping him and giving him to the best bidder. And there's one team out there that I'm telling you will convince himself of Saquon Barkley. Okay, because Saquon Barkley, when he's right, is a hell of a talent. And there's one team out there, there's got to be one team out there that's going to convince themselves of that. There just has to be. And $7 million isn't like cheap, isn't expensive, or isn't super cheap, but it's also not like super expensive. It's not taking on James Bradbury's contract or some other $15 million contract. A lot of teams can fit $7 million on their books.
Yeah, Bobby, at this point, if you are a fan who did watch the Giants every Sunday the last 2 years, or really even the last 3, now, if you don't watch the Giants every Sunday, I can understand why you would want to keep Saquon Barkley. I get it. You still have the shades of 2018. 2018 was fun. 2018 was exciting. He had the big plays. He had the electric plays.
Even
so if you're not watching in 2019, if you're not watching every Sunday and you're a passive Giants fan, I get it. Why you would want this guy to be on your football team. But if you're a Giants fan who's with it every week, and you're also a football fan who watches football and pays attention to football around the National Football League, and you still think that the Giants need this game difference running back on their team, I don't know what to say to you. I just don't know what to say to you anymore. And we will have to probably come to the realization where I know you were very much in the middle of the season. Now, times change. I'm not going to hold anything against you when you say that the Giants need to trade Saquon Barkley for a second, third rounder. But I think we do need to accept the reality that $7 million for a running back is a steep price tag, especially for a running back that is injury prone. And the Giants trading Saquon Barkley right now this offseason isn't solely just about a salary dump. It definitely isn't about getting a draft pick back. Trading Saquon Barkley, the value in trading him is that he is not on your team. And then you don't have to worry about, are we going to be in a situation where we have to pay him? Are we going to be in a situation where he plays good and then we have to pay him? And then when we pay him, it's not going to work. It is not going to work if we sign Saquon Barkley to a multi-year extension. It will not work. Name me the time in the last 5 years, Bobby, that extending a running back has worked for a team in the National Football League. Christian McCaffrey, it's not even working right now.
No, it's not. The only one you can is maybe Dalvin Cook. Like, really, that's the only one.
He was hurt this year.
Yeah. And again, like, the Vikings aren't killing it, but I'm not going to put that on one player. And he plays a position, Justin, because let's get the O-line, because the Giants have failed Saquon Barkley. Like, let's not, if this is a different conversation if we're in year 2 and not going into year 5. Saquon can be a valuable piece when he's right, but the thing is he hasn't been right, and I'm not gonna bet that he's going to get right. I'm not gonna do the further he gets into his career bet he's gonna get better.
You had a really
healthy.
good point on the Jones year in review pod, where you're like, if you're thinking that Jones can turn it around and be good, it's based off of faith. It's not really anything realistic, and I think it's the same thing. I don't want to say realistic, but it's the same argument with Saquon Barkley, where if you're thinking that Saquon Barkley can turn around, be healthy, and be a good player, then it's off of faith, which it's good to have faith, but there's nothing substantial that's been shown that can actually happen.
Well, and if Jones were to turn it around and be really good, that's awesome. Let's franchise tag him and see another year of it. With Saquon, it's like, well, now we got to pay him, or let him walk for nothing. And maybe a comp pick, which again at most is going to be essentially the beginning of the 4th round. That's at most what you're going to get out of it.
Dave Gettleman banked on comp picks, and look at how well that worked out for us. I think Landon Collins was the best return that we got, and
Collins was the one
and that was
did
Matt
work
Parrott,
out.
by the way. That was Matt Parrott.
Yeah,
Look at how
Collins
good he turned out.
Collins. Yeah, I don't want to. It's a what you do with it is different than I think the Collins decision was smart. I don't think they got more than that. Trade wise, maybe they got offered a third. I don't know. But he plays a position, Justin, that the last 2 years where we've had bad offensive line play, the run game got a little better for the Giants in 2020, offensive line wise. But where Wayne Gallman and Devontae Booker, who neither are particularly good, I don't think Wayne Gallman's really good at all, honestly. I know a lot of people liked Wayne Gallman. I never really did because I didn't think he added much besides just running straight and hard. And Devontae Booker were able to do okay behind bad offensive lines, like those two guys. So, if you're making the argument for Saquon Barkley, you fix the offensive line, he can be really good. Well, how about you get someone who's won $2 million and they're averaging 4.8 yards per carry behind a bad offensive line, where, Devontae Booker averaged 4.2 behind a horrible run blocking offensive line. What did Wayne Gallman average in 2020?
He averaged more than that.
He averaged 4.6. Those are behind bad offensive lines. The best Saquon Barkley did was 5 yards per carry his rookie year. And then I think it was 4.8 his second year. Yeah. And he didn't have any runs of 50-plus yards. I don't care how banged up Saquon Barkley is. The fact that he didn't have a single run over 50-plus yards is insane. So guess what? I think we can get an average running back, or maybe you draft one in the 4th, 5th round, and it's a position where you see the late guys turn into something, and those guys can average 4.7, 4.8 yards per carry for you if you fix the offensive line. Like, bet on that. And again, there's some tough decisions. Like, moving on from Bradbury is going to be tough. Moving on from Blake Martinez would be tough. Hell, even moving on from Slayton would be tough because he's so cheap right now, But, Saquon Barkley should be an easy decision for this regime under Joe Schoen.
And it should be a priority. It shouldn't even just be an easy decision. It should be a priority where if Saquon Barkley does end up on the Giants this upcoming year, I don't know what goes on behind closed doors and behind the scenes and the conversations that Joe Schoen has with other GMs, but I would be disappointed. I'd be disappointed in Joe Schoen and not finding something that would work. Because that's what this week at the Combine's for, too. Having conversations with people around the league.
Listen, you could get a 2023 draft pick. Hell, and, Research Rick pointed this out. Maybe you're bringing a player back, let's not forget how untradeable Olivier Vernon was. No one's going to trade for Olivier Vernon. We all had resigned to the fact Olivier Vernon's going to be cut. We traded him for Kevin Zeitler,
Yep.
There has to be some type of market for Saquon Barkley because there's teams that are going to convince themselves of what Saquon Barkley can be, because what Saquon Barkley can be is insane. He is someone who can has added wins at the running back spot his 2 first seasons as a New York Giant. But it's time to move on from Saquon Barkley because you're heading into this final year. There's really no good argument for keeping him unless you think this team can win a Super Bowl this year. There's no good argument for keeping Saquon Barkley.
One of the things that we talked about in our Zach interview was offensive line. Talked a lot about that at the end. Joe Schoen talked a lot about kind of what he values in an offensive lineman, talking about intangibles and character a little bit even more than physical traits and what he looks at on film. And there was even references to, hey, you don't need to necessarily build up an offensive line by taking everybody in the first round. I know you have some thoughts on that, and it's also been a discussion on Giants Twitter, Giants socials this week too amongst fans.
Yeah, it's relevant, and we try to not get into these draft conversations until the month of April hits, because so many things changes. And again, we have no idea what's going to happen in free agency. A lot's going to change. The way we looked at the Giants roster pre-free agency 2021 was totally different the way we did, April 1st. And I said this earlier in the week, Justin, that if Akeem Ekwonu and Evan Neal aren't there at 5, I don't want to take an offensive lineman with an offensive tackle with pick 5 or 7. Now, some people may like Charles Cross more than me. Fine, that's your opinion. My opinion is that he's not worth one of those picks. But the conversation has talked about, you can build an offensive line with the later rounds. I think that you can kind of do that with almost every position besides QB and edge for the most part. And edge, obviously, there's late round guys that work out. But I feel like those are the two positions where it's the first round guys are the guys that are at the top of the league consistently. That's fine, but there has to be a real plan for fixing this offensive line. Okay, it can't be picking someone just in the third or fourth round. Like there needs to be a plan that if those guys aren't there, then like this is our plan. And I think one of them is like should be really trying to trade back because there's a guy Kenyon Green. I'd be willing to take him at 7. I know a lot of people wouldn't take a guard at 7. I get that. And I don't think the Giants would take him at 7. But you know what? If we were to trade back to pick 12 and get Kenyon Green, that's a lot freaking sweeter or whatever pick. I'm just throwing a rant. Like that makes a lot more sense. There has to be a real plan. And I know the Bills offensive line doesn't have much of first round picks, but Dawkins was there before, I believe. And their offensive line really isn't very good with the Bills. They had some decent free agent signings, and we talked with Anthony, but they were great in sack rate, but a lot of that was due to Josh Allen. Look at their pressure rate. It wasn't very good.
Yeah, but I mean, also, you have to remember with the whole pressure rate, and I've told you this, and I want you to, we have to, it also has to come down to watching film of the Bills, too. Maybe that's something that needs to be done, but Josh Allen holds onto the ball for a very long time. His time to throw in the National Football League has been close to 3 seconds the last couple of years. So when a quarterback's holding onto the ball for 3 seconds, it's tough for an offensive line to not allow and give up that pressure. So that's the give and take when you have to say, oh, the Bills' offensive line isn't that good. Yeah, they're not great, but Josh Allen holding onto the ball inflates that pressure rate.
Right, but I mean, when we talked with Anthony, Anthony Provoca of Cover One, so yeah, they signed a decent center in free agency, and Deion Dawkins is good, but the rest of the offensive line wasn't anything to write home about. So there has to the last 10 years, the Giants organization has not taken building the offensive line serious. It's been much more than just bad draft picks. Like this offensive line doesn't need to be totally turned around in year 1, but there needs to be serious steps taken. And again, if Evan Neal or Akeem Ekwonu are there at 5 and they don't take one of them, I will be pissed. Like I really will. And you know me, like I like to look at trust the guys that do what they're doing. But there would be if they took Isaiah Simmons, I would have been pretty livid. But I would be pissed if Akeem Ekwonu or Evan Neal are there at 5 and they have this mindset of, oh well, we can just we can build offensive line later in the rounds.
Yeah.
Like I would be flat out pissed off if one of those guys is there and they don't draft them.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of the slam dunk superstar guys in the draft, then it seems like Neal and Ekwonu are 2 guys that might be those guys, that you really would get excited over. So we'll see how it pans out. The thing that I liked most about, again, Shane, and we talked about this with Zach Rosenblatt towards the end of the interview too. We talked about O-line towards the end, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But even if they don't take somebody first round, Bobby, let's just say Ekwonu and Neal are gone by the time we get to 5, which is a possibility. I do feel confident that Joe Schoen and this front office, at least Joe Schoen, I don't know about the rest of the front office, but some of the scouts that we have left, but I feel confident that he is going to have a plan because he talks about the intangibles and character being probably just as important as those physical traits. And even when he's dancing around answers, Bobby, the ability to still talk specifically about what he looks for, I liked it, and he was specifically talking about that with the offensive line, where it's important to play as 5, not just have the guys that are the biggest, the strongest, and the most athletic. So the ability to play for 5 and whatever they come away with in these interviews, whether it's an interview that they did at the Senior Bowl, an interview they're going to do at the Combine, or Zoom conversation, FaceTime conversations they're going to have in the next upcoming months. So I do trust that he is going to have the plan and do his due diligence on that end.
Yeah, they've given us no reason to not, but again, if Ekwonu and Neal are gone at pick 5, if they take Kayvon Thibodeau and Ahmad Gardner at 5 and 7, at the end of day 1, we're doing our day 1 recap. Am I happy? Yeah. Am I a little disappointed those guys didn't fall to us? Yeah, but you can't control that. But if we finish day 2, where we have a 2nd round pick, 2 3rd-round picks, maybe even get another one in there with the James Bradbury trade, and if we're feeling crazy, maybe they'll say maybe having 4 picks on day 2, and like last year we finished day 2 without an offensive line.
Yeah,
then I'm gonna be pissed. Then I'm gonna be pissed. Where it's kind of the similar situation as last year, where on day 3 people were freaking out not picking someone in the 4th, 5th round. I was like, you shouldn't have been pissed off today. You should have been pissed off yesterday and on Thursday. Those are the days you should have been pissed off. You should have been pissed off in free agency as a whole, but don't try and fill out this offensive line with day 3 guys. Pick
No,
offensive
they
line
are
on day
they are
3.
aware of it too, because it was both Schoen and Daboll laughed at the fact that we only have 5 healthy offensive linemen on the roster. So that's the difference also between this regime and the previous regime. Dave Gettleman would laugh in the face if you ever doubted that the Giants didn't have a good offensive line. We trust our guys. We trust Lemieux. We trust Parrott. Hey, they had Nate Solder in their back pocket too. That worked out great. And that was that. Right? Whereas Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are literally laughing at the fact that they have 5 healthy offensive linemen, and I can imagine maybe 1 or 2 of them on the team next year out of those 5 healthy ones. So
let's look at the offensive linemen on the roster right now that are healthy. Thomas and Bredesen. Shane Lemieux coming off an injury. Nick Gates coming off an injury. Matt Parrott coming off an injury. Billy Price, Will Hernandez, free agents. Wes Martin, I think, is a free agent because he I don't know. But
we signed him from the practice squad.
Again, it's Wes Martin. Corey Cunningham, Corey Cunningham, I don't think I think he'd be a free agent too because this is his 4th year, so I think his rookie contract is up.
There you go.
It's
So we got Thomas and
Ben Bredesen.
Okay.
Who Ben Bredesen couldn't unseat Matt Skura.
Tough.
So it needs to be addressed, and maybe free agency changes it a little bit. There's a good chance that if there's one position they do spend a little money on free agency, it is offensive line.
Yeah, I'm thinking interior. I'm thinking interior O-line because there's a shit ton of them. There is a shit ton of interior offensive linemen in free agency. I can't even tell you who. I mean, there's going to be guys that are going to get big money, but then you would think there's going to be guys that are going to get 1 to 2 year deals, and I think that's where the Giants are going to fall into. And I think they're going to be in the market for an edge rusher, possibly getting a 1-year deal. And you've seen a lot of edge rushers get 1-year deals and have success. I really do think Jerry Hughes from the Bills is going to be a Giant. I kind of think that's a lock.
He balled in the playoffs. I've been watching our Cover One friends talk about him, and it's no, Jerry Hughes is a baller. I'm not going to argue with you Bills fans.
One other thing I want to touch on, and I forgot about this, I didn't tell you. Joe Schoen, during the fan questions, talked about upgrading the technology in the building, which I was talking with Jordan Ron on it. We were talking with Jordan Ron on about that, and he didn't really have a good grasp of what specifically they were doing, but Joe Schoen did talk about how he wants everything to be on a computer, utilizing this computer program where you click on a player, then boom, all the reports come up, all the film can come up on a guide that they have available. He did still mention, which this is the part that makes me feel bad for Joe Schoen, that they are still using the magnetic boards, which I think that's what Dave Gettleman had, where they didn't make all the upgrades to the tech stuff, but I can't imagine how difficult it is. Maybe not so much for the coaching staff, because the coaching staff, they're eventually going to connect and they're eventually going to start speaking their own same language and eventually come together. But Joe Schoen, right now, how difficult it is that he is bringing in probably new tech stuff, a new way of doing things, a new way of going about stuff. Thank God that he evaluated rounds 1 through 4 before he got here, because all these scouts that probably have never worked with this shit. Now, maybe I'm being naive and maybe it's not that hard, but the language that he speaks, the way that he goes about scouting, the language that the other scouts speak that were already here, the technology that they use or the lack of technology. Remember that big binder that Gettleman had during the COVID draft. I just feel bad for him.
I'm a binder guy.
I know you're a binder guy, but there's a part of me that feels bad for Joe Schoen, that he's probably just going absolutely crazy. I can imagine that's the case.
All right, that's it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, nothing really from the Daboll.
Brian Daboll, don't chew gum while at the presser because it makes you breathe real heavy.
That was the best part.
He wasn't very playful. But it is what it is. All right. When Covington and Masvidal step into the octagon this Saturday at UFC 272, DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC, has a knockout offer for new customers. Gonna knock your ass out. Literally, this DraftKings is coming, is gonna knock you on the ground. Bet just $1 on the main event and get $100 in free bets no matter what. Could be a first round knockout, could be majority draw, or double knockout resulting in a no contest. No matter the outcome, you get paid, and then you get laid. If Sportsbank isn't available in your state yet, you can still feel the thrill of UFC 272 with DraftKings free to play pools. Everyone can enter a free pool with $10,000 in prizes. And if you ask the old me, I would have cleaned that pool for you. Answer a handful of questions like how long the fight will last and who will walk out a winner, and follow along to track your results. Speaking of pools, Justin, I ran into my old boss today.
Sure.
Just kind of, shot the breeze for 5 minutes. And,
did you ask him how long the UFC fight was going to be?
I didn't. He's not really UFC. I was just like, how are you guys doing employee-wise? I know it's hard to find good employees.
I know, because
so that's why I should be valued, John Boy. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code John Boy. Throw down just $1 on the UFC 272 main event and get $100 in free bets no matter the outcome. That's code John Boy this Saturday at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. Hi, here's Zach Rosenblatt of NJ.com.
All right, we want to welcome you back onto the show. With us live from Indianapolis, it is Zach Rosenblatt from NewJersey.com. Zach, we need to find a TV show that we can watch again together, because I think the last time that you were on, we were both obsessed with Mayor of Easttown.
And I just saw Kate Winslet won like an award for it like a couple days ago, so it's a nice full circle for us.
Yes, that makes me very happy for her. Love her.
Yeah.
How are you, my friend? Thank you for joining us.
I'm good, man. Yeah, it's it's obviously been a quiet couple of weeks after it was a busy offseason for the Giants, but I'm ready for things to get cooking again and try and find out some info while I'm out here. And it's weird being back here because we obviously weren't here last year, and the last time we were here was right before the pandemic hit, or I guess the COVID was probably already spreading at that point, and we just didn't know about it or whatever. So yeah, it's weird being back here, but it feels good to be around everybody again.
And that was your first year on the Giants beat, right?
Yeah, that was I was just transitioning from Eagles to Giants, like at the combine. And I actually, it's funny because I remember being at like Howie Roseman's press conference, and he had like a water bottle, and he like made a joke. He's like, I don't want to get COVID, or like it was like some bad joke that he probably couldn't have made like a week after that. But
shucks.
Yeah.
Zoinks.
It's specifically NJ.com, not NewJersey.com, Justin. We got to get that right.
Me.
I actually appreciate that, Bobby. Thank you.
Yeah, Eli Apple's mother made it clear. It's NJ.com that we don't like. I forgot to put this on the rundown. You took second in the Toney Award voting. We haven't had you on the show since. Now, that would mean you're the favorite to win next year because Duggan can't win.
Well, yeah. Well, I saw Jordan's gonna full on suck up this next year, so I need to grease the wheels myself, and maybe throw a Talking Giants versus the World tweet up on a random moment when nobody's expecting it, and
we've been really giving people tips because all the tips help us, where it's like
this is as you guys talked about, this is all selfish, and all you want is more attention for it.
Well, it's the exact same thing as the good guy award by the media. It's whoever was the nicest to us gets an award at the end of the year. So it's like, Jordan's like, you got to just have us on your podcast with you. It's like, all right, you got to like write an article about this success.
Hey, I have written about you guys multiple times at this point.
This is true.
That's true.
You've written about us, but not about us.
Well, no, I did the Nick Gates thing I wrote about you guys.
Yeah. Nick Gates versus the World was definitely
and
about us.
I started Penkin. I did that on purpose.
You did start Penkin. This is very true.
Yeah, and our relationship started with DeAndre Baker, where we're giving out our like legal tips, and then you're like, I'm talking to like an actual like lawyer and stuff.
You're giving out legal tips, yeah.
But let's get into the Giants. There's plenty of time for you to make your case for the Toney Award. Daniel Jones is the starting QB right now, was said by Joe Schoen. Now you listen to the video, and it's basically saying that he's the starting QB for 2022. It seems that way. Maybe there's a QB in this draft they love. Let's just throw out that scenario right now. What do you see from what you've heard? What do you think they think of Daniel Jones? And then with that, what is their backup QB plan? Is it going to be maybe someone that's better than Mike Glennon, but kind of the same Mike Glennon level? Or are they actually going to try and bring in a Marcus Mariota? Trubisky might be out of their range, but that type of player for their backup.
Yeah, it is funny. Anytime like a GM says the right now thing, because it's happened so many times where they say that and then they wind up trading like Josh Rosen or whatever it is. Like that always happens. I don't think this is that. I do think he's their quarterback this year. They're not going to do much better than him in reality. But yeah, so in terms of what they think about him, I think they're intrigued by him. I think they think he could be a good quarterback. They're not I don't think they're necessarily like married to the idea of keeping him long term. Otherwise, they would be exercising that option. I don't think they're going to. That's not. They said they haven't decided yet. I feel. I don't know if it would make much sense to exercise the option, but yeah. It's going to be interesting. I think that their goal is to give them a better support system, but it's going to be hard to do that because they keep talking about how they need to clear all this cap and make these hard decisions. So they're going to have to get rid of guys. And so your roster is going to be weakened at that point. You have to fill those holes, and they need to revamp the offensive line, or you're probably going to start a couple of rookies, you would think, low-level veterans. And so it's going to be interesting. It's still going to be hard it's always going to be hard to evaluate him. Hopefully they put him in a better spot to succeed next year. But yeah, in terms of the backup, they definitely have, they have to get somebody better than Mike Glennon. It shouldn't be very hard to do that. Yeah, like you said, I think the Mariotas and Trubisky's are probably out of their price range, especially Trubisky. I think, a couple of weeks ago, I got the impression that they would be interested in that, but now it just sounds like he's going to get a starting opportunity. So, and he would have to compete for that with Jones in theory or whatever, and he probably wouldn't start here right away. So yeah, I wouldn't say those guys. It would probably more. I'd have to look at the free agents who they are, but I imagine it's going to be like a step above Mike Glennon, but maybe not they're still not going to spend like $10 million on a backup. It's still going to be pretty low cost, I would imagine.
Who had the question that was before Joe Schoen were open for business, and it was in terms of trades? I think it was Jordan, right?
Yeah, I think because he was asking about the draft picks, I believe, if he's willing to make trade. That Shane's big thing was he's always willing to listen, which the last GM, sometimes he would say we are open for business, but a lot, that he would do the stuff like with the Saquon. He was not, a bag of donuts or whatever that famous quote was. Yeah. Joe Schoen he's going to be willing. He's willing to trade back. I'd be surprised if they traded up, but he says he would if the deal was right. He'll listen to offers on pretty much any players. That's the right way to be. You have to be open to all things.
But I think Jordan also threw in the name Saquon.
Yeah, that was an earlier question. He asked about Saquon. He said I'm open to anything. And my takeaway, I saw Ian Rappaport was saying that he doesn't think they'll trade him or whatever. But I don't know, just you overreact to these things, and this is one of our first times even talking to them, so you don't know if they're being completely truthful with us. But I got the impression that they're at least willing to trade him. I don't know if they will. You have to balance what you can get back for him with the savings, and what they plan on doing. If they're getting rid of Bradbury, they maybe don't necessarily need to trade Barkley, kind of thing. It just depends on what their plan is, what they want to do. If they want to surround Daniel Jones with talent, Saquon Barkley's talented, even if he can't stay healthy. So I don't know, but so I would say they're definitely going to listen to offers. I would imagine Joe Schoen is going to be talking to other GMs this week about Saquon, about James Bradbury, about guys like that.
Yeah, and what Ian was saying, and I think it was mostly opinion, but he wasn't even talking about will the Giants do it. He was talking about, which this makes me kind of
this is what worries me.
For the first time, he was talking about, like you said, Zach, the return and how teams wouldn't be interested in, number one, picking up that $7 million for a player that's been hurt. And then number two, you're not only taking on that, that $7 million, the cap hit, but you're also giving up a draft pick. So I don't know, Zach, we're Giants fans. We watch the team every day, and we like to think, at least in our brains, that Saquon Barkley, this guy is worth something, right? Even though we've watched him and we get frustrated by him. Now hearing what Ian Rappaport had to say about the return, where are you on that, and where are you thinking about what can the Giants get somewhat of a good return? I'm not even going to ask you what return can they get, but can they get something that could work and we all can be like, all right, makes sense.
If they get offered a 5th or a 6th, do you think they'll take that, or would you?
So what I was gonna say is I think if they trade him, it probably is more about the cap savings than the return they're getting in reality. Mm-hmm. It's almost a salary dump, and I don't know if the Giants wanted, especially John Mara, I don't know if they want that, the PR of just giving up Saquon for a 5th round pick. So I don't know. If you look at, the only reason I would argue that maybe they get something more is you look at their teams. There's someone that would fall. All it takes is one team, and that the Texans. Bill O'Brien's not running any teams anymore, unfortunately. But he traded a 3rd round pick for Duke Johnson. And last year Sonny Michel was traded for a 4th round pick, I think, 4th and a 6th, or it was something like that. And Saquon's when he's healthy is better than Sonny Michel. And he's more dynamic, and if you're a really good team and you're you feel like you're a piece away, you're running back away on offense, and you can make them a big part of your passing game. I could see a team convincing themselves, all right, maybe we give them a even if it's a pick next year, not even this year or something like that, like where they do like a late round pick and then, a fourth next year or a conditional third or like something like that. Like maybe. I don't think that's going to happen, but like I could see a scenario where it does. I think how it goes is he's back. I personally have thought that. I mean, I would say the percentage went down today after hearing the comments, but maybe, because they're probably not going to be a very good team this year in reality, even if they're competitive. So maybe he's healthy at the trade deadline and he's starting to look more like himself. Even if he's good, the reality is giving a running back a second contract is a bad idea no matter what. So maybe you can get something for him at the trade deadline when a team's trying to, make a Super Bowl run.
Yeah, which scares me because he hasn't stayed healthy since his rookie season. Even then, he got hurt in camp.
So you're risking value even going down more in theory. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's less time for him to have an impact on a roster. Now, the guys where it's like James Bradbury's name is hot in the streets for obvious reason. He does have a good trade market most likely, and he's got a big cap hit. Joe Schoen mentioned hey, we have a bunch of contingency plans for what happens, and there's some things that are out of our control. And then also mentioned talking with agents of their current on the current roster, while also saying he doesn't want to restructure. That's a last case resort. But is restructures coming? And is there anyone who can really pitch on a pay cut? Because I look at the guys who they can pitch on a pay cut, and I just don't know if those guys are on the roster.
Yeah, that's the tough part, because a lot of the guys that you would want to give a pay cut to are probably guys that could just go and sign for that money somewhere else or something like Blake Martinez is an interesting one. He's not going to make what he's currently making somewhere else if they cut him, because he's coming off an ACL injury and all that. So does he want to come back here? Would he rather just go and follow Patrick Graham or something like that? Would he even accept a pay cut? Darius Slayton's one, his salary went up. He obviously had a bad year. I don't think they can keep him at his current salary just based on how he played last year. Guys like that. What was the original question?
Are restructures coming?
Oh, restructures. Yeah. So I'm the one that asked him that, because he had mentioned that, but I feel like he keeps talking, that $40 million number is the one that they keep bringing up. And I don't think they would just outright cut James Bradbury. I guess, and if they just didn't find anything and they absolutely need that money. So I don't know, a scenario where I could see them restructuring is if they're having a tough time, getting the trade done by, when free agency starts. And so they decide that, they want to restructure Leonard Williams or, whatever, one of those guys that you're confident is going to be here long-term, which I don't know if they have a lot of those guys, is another thing. I don't know if you really want to kick the bucket down the road with Kenny Golladay, for example. Although, he would make sense, I guess, in theory, because you're stuck with him anyway. But so I don't know. I think he meant it when he said it's a last case scenario. I don't think he wants to do I think he wants to. That's why the tough decisions thing is going to come from the fact that rather than restructure all these guys, they're just going to cut bait on a talented player like James Bradbury, as opposed to restructuring 4 different guys and, pushing it back and when they're not going to be good anyway. So it's going to be a very interesting balance, because he keeps talking about how he wants to be competitive this year. And if you're getting rid of your best cornerback and, your starting middle linebacker and, your number 2 running back and all that stuff, it's going to be hard to be competitive, because you have to fill those jobs with somebody else too. And you're probably not going to be, it's going to be rookies and it's going to be, cheap veterans. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he threads that needle. And he seems like he knows what he's doing. The Bills had to do this when he arrived there. I know they traded a few guys and they cut a few guys. So you look at that and think they'll probably do something similar, but it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. Because especially the one thing I keep thinking with Bradbury, I think he has value. I think he's a good player, but everybody in the league knows that they want to get rid of him. So right. So what is his value really at that point? He has 1 year left on his deal, I believe.
And the cap number, again, we're talking about with Saquon, that cap number. You think Saquon's number's high.
Well, I would say Bradbury's cap number almost seems better. $13.5 million for a, Pro Bowl caliber cornerback is a really good number, I would say, in theory. And
does that, now this could be a stupid question, but, does that, whatever bonus that comes in the month of March, or there, because his cap number with the Giants is $21 million. So how does that work out?
Because of all the bonuses, it's just the salary. When they trade him, and the other team just inherits the salary. And
gotcha. Okay.
$13.5 million.
All right, so that's better.
So for the other, so that's why the Giants have to trade him, is because of that cap hit is so high, and because they could save so much, and he has value. It's just it's the irony, because it's one of the few good Dave Gettleman signings, and they have to get rid of him because of all his other bad signings. So. It's kind of the irony of Dave Gettleman, of course. But yeah, so it's just gonna be very interesting to see how they approach it. So they keep talking about these tough decisions, and the only really like tough ones that you could point to would be like Saquon Barkley and James Bradbury, I guess Blake Martinez. So yeah, it's gonna be a busy couple of weeks. They're gonna have a busier time getting rid of guys and probably bringing in new guys, I would say.
What I actually think are some of the tougher decisions, like Saquon, I think should be an easy decision. I think it's tougher because of who Saquon Barkley is and not just his play on the field. Bradbury and Blake, maybe a little tougher, but because their cap hits are so high, it makes it easier. There's three guys that I look at as kind of tough decisions with Darius Slayton, Caden Smith, and Julian Love, who received pay increases due to their playing time as late round draft picks. Where they can all be cut with saving $2.5 million a piece on those guys with like $100,000 or $200,000 and dead cap. Like those three guys are all players like you would like to have on the roster, but like they can it also would make sense that you're not missing those guys a ton if you do move on from them. Like what do you see happening with those three guys?
Yeah, Caden Smith, I know his knee thing was like pretty bad. I think it was knee. So I want he'd be a guy that I would think made sense as a pay cut type deal, like they did with like Yadam last year or whatever. So I wouldn't make. I mean, if they cut him, they don't have like any tight ends. So I mean, they
literally might have no tight ends.
Technically, they have Kyle Rudolph, but obviously everybody knows Kyle Rudolph is gone. It's kind of like one of those foregone conclusions. Slayton's an interesting one. I think because of just how bad he was last year. I don't know if you're actually going to get anything in a trade. I mean, you've seen I found a trade the Bills actually did. They traded Zay Jones during the season, so it's a little different. He was not even really playing for the Bills, and they still got like a 5th round pick for him. And I think Darius Slayton is, at his best is, at least as good as Zay Jones. But he had a bad year last year. So if this was after last season, they probably could have got something for Slayton. But I don't know. So I don't see him as someone who might want to take a pay cut necessarily. I don't know. That'd be a tough one because I think he'd have interest. He probably wouldn't make more than he's making with the Giants. And who is the third guy?
Julian Love.
Yeah, I would think he comes back because I think he has a lot of value in that as depth in that defense, and he's young, and I think the coaches. I mean, Jerome Henderson, I like him a lot. So I don't know that. I mean, his number is a little high for a backup. So like it wouldn't shock me if like they cut him or whatever. But I would say out of those three, I think he's probably the most likely to be back.
Yeah, I'd hope Love stays and kind of goes back to what he was doing in 2019, and that kind of being in the box since Peppers is probably gone too. So you're gonna need that in the box guy. Who knows what Logan Ryan's gonna be doing. You'll have McKinney back there as the single high safety too. One final specific player question, then maybe we'll touch on some other stuff. Nick Gates. Now, I think we're biased on this show, and you may be
we're biased because he's good every chance he gets. But
yes, and we're biased because we're friendly with him and whatnot. Is he healthy for this year? And what future of Nick Gates? And this may have to be a humbling pill we'll have to swallow here at Talking Giants.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I mean, I don't get the impression that he'd be ready to play this year. He's going to fight through it, and it wouldn't shock me if he found his way back earlier than expected. But there's just no way they're going to be able to pay him the salary he's making this year, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah. He has like $2 million. I don't, especially for a guy that's probably not going to play. Like you hope that maybe they come to like some injury settlement where he comes back after, or like something along those lines, or they just cut the salary and they stash him on injury reserve for the year, something like that. But at his current salary, I just don't see it. But again, like he's obviously he's loved in that locker room. I know the coaching staff is completely different, but John Mara knows who Nick Gates is, like, so I don't know. He's a very popular figure in there, so you hope that they at least find a way to keep him around. But I feel like this year is probably going to be a lot of rehab and recovery for him, so it's kind of tough to pay him $2 million.
It's just frustrating because obviously we like Nick Gates, but we like Nick Gates, and Nick Gates likes us because he's been good every opportunity he's gotten. Going back to 2019 and as like
every role, yeah.
Yeah, like he started a game at right tackle versus the Jets and was the best offensive lineman on that day. Obviously a bad O-line, so he's been good. I just feel like there's got to be, with the way this offensive line is, I feel like you've got to figure out a way to bring a good offensive line back and at least give him his shot to come back from that leg injury. Whether it's, moving that, if there's someone you restructure, maybe restructure Nick Gates some way. I know it's a weird to restructure a cheaper deal like that. But like, you know, at the end of he was a better offensive lineman than Kevin Zeitler in 2020. Yeah. Like Kevin Zeitler got refreshed and went back to Baltimore. He didn't want to be with New York, and maybe that had something to do with it. But like he was their best offensive lineman in 2020, and he's a good offensive lineman. It would be, to me, besides like, you know, me just liking Nick Gates, I think it'd be a shame with a team that's offensive line is so bad right now to move on from a good one.
You would, I mean, the issue is you just, unfortunately, and again, as much as I like Nick Gates a lot, I think he's a good player too. Like you just don't know what he's going to be coming out of this injury.
Yeah.
You know, you hope at the very least maybe you can have like depth with him when he's healthy again. But yeah, just like the unknown with him is what makes it so hard, and that's the unfortunate. Like he's worked so hard to get where he is, and you know, anytime I've talked to him, he always like talked about he would play any position if it meant he was playing. Like he didn't care where they put him, like all that stuff. Like he was willing to make sacrifices, and the unfortunate part is he's going to have to fight his way back all over again. Just coming off that. I mean, he's a guy that a lot of other teams like really knew about. So it was like, you know, Giants fans and the Giants knew about Nick Gates. Other people didn't really know about him. He kind of emerged out of nowhere as a quality center, and then he was going to play guard again, and then he got hurt. So I don't know if he can get healthy. Like there's, you know, he's a guy that can play multiple positions, and he started a bunch of games in the NFL, and there's always a room in the NFL for guys like that. But he just needs to have a full recovery, and that was like a gruesome injury. And you know, I hope it's going well for him. It seems like it is, but. That's it's gonna be a tough one because I like I said, I don't think at that salary he'll be back, but I'm sure he would agree to a pay cut, honestly, if they wanted him back, but we'll see.
We lost BJ Hill, a 7th round pick, and Nick Gates due to the Billy Price trade because Billy Price literally threw his guy through Nick Gates' leg.
Giants made a YouTube video saying how good Billy Price is. Did you see that, Bobby?
Oh, yeah, in the season. I remember me and Zach laughing about that.
No, I think this was recently. Wasn't this recently that they did something, like a little film study?
I don't remember, Zach, they did the PFF stat.
They had a tweet. Yeah, they had a tweet about like...
I was like, Billy Price doesn't deserve this. Like, why would you do this at Giants?
All right, I have building offensive line questions since that's that's what everybody's talking about. And, you know, I feel like this week, really, it started to heat up on socials, Giants, Twitter, whatever, how, you know, you can build an offensive line outside of round one. And I even feel like Joe Schoen kind of talked about that today. And I don't know if you were, you know, part of the, they did like a fan.
He was asked directly, like, what do you think about not using a first round pick on an offensive line?
Yeah. So he was talking about, you know, intangibles are just as valuable as physical traits. So, you know, go ahead and give us some thoughts on what you heard today from Schoen and what you think about how he's going about building this offensive line, or how he wants to build it.
Yeah, like I don't think it's as simple as like they're not, just because they haven't doesn't mean they won't pick an offensive lineman in the first round. Like if they have a guy at number 5, or you know they trade back or whatever it is that they like if Ikwonu or Neal fell to them at 5, like I feel like you have to take one of those guys.
Right.
But they probably won't. But like that's the thing. Like if it's a player that you can build, like this is a team that just does not have cornerstone talent on its roster. So when that at 5 and 7, whether it's an offensive lineman or it's something else, you pick the best player. Like that, it won't be a quarterback in this draft. So pretty much any other position you could argue that this team could draft. So, you know, whether that's a corner or an offensive lineman, an edge rusher, like they can get those guys in this draft. So, you know, if those 2 tackles are picked, then, you know, I know Bobby doesn't really like Charles Cross that much. Like he's the name that gets thrown around a lot. I don't know how they feel about him. It's still too early to figure that out. So you can pick other positions and, you know, pick a guard in the 2nd round that can start for you right away, or they need to find the right tackle. I think they're going to hit the veteran, trying, you know, the bargain bin in the offensive lineman in free agency. I think they're going to hit that. You might see that there's a bunch of guys even coming from the Chiefs and Bills. I think they're hitting free agency that maybe they go after. Like if they high, they're going to, at the high end, their top free agent will be like a mid-level guy. And I imagine that will be an offensive lineman. They basically like said comments, him and Daboll were like, we only have 5 healthy offensive linemen on our roster. Like they said that without even like a direct question about it. So like they know what they have to do. Andrew Thomas is the only one you can lock in. Who knows what you have in Shane Lemieux. You know, they clearly don't like Matt Parrott in this organization for whatever reason. So that, I mean, Billy Price is free agent. I guess they have Ben Bredesen. Like these aren't guys that you can rely on. So
I guess they got Ben Bredesen as like such a horrible line 4 years after Dave Gettleman promising to fix the offensive line.
I was saying to another reporter, like we're going to look back at this offensive line like years from now and be like, they actually went an entire season with this offensive line, like with Nate Score at right tackle and Will Hernandez at right guard. Like
when, you know, that I think back to that Panthers game, and that was a game where we gave Jason Garrett a lot of credit. It's like this offensive line is like inoperable right now. It's they took like 2 deep shots in that game, and that was one of those games where we always ask for Garrett to push the ball downfield. It's like, nope, we're fine. We're fine with not doing it. In this week.
I feel pretty confident it'll be better next year, just by virtue of they seem to be better at evaluating offense. Like Joe Schoen and his staff, and Brandon Brown came from the Eagles, and they're one of the best at picking offensive linemen. Like the odds of them like stumbling on like a guy in the later rounds that winds up being good are higher than when with the previous staff who, for whatever reason, just wasn't doing that. So.
And not to belabor Dave Gettleman at this, he's gone, good riddance. But it wasn't even like they were bad at picking offensive linemen. It's like they didn't prioritize offensive line over 4 years.
Yeah.
Like Andrew Thomas, Nate Solder, and Will Hernandez were like the biggest investments. Nate Solder was a bad investment from the minute that ink was dried. Will Hernandez, I think, was you can't plan on him not working out. Yeah. That was a good investment. But after
that pick was fine when they made it. Yeah.
Yeah, like their next best investment was Matt Parrott. Who they wouldn't start over Nate Solder, who was, washed and like not an NFL player anymore. That was their 4th biggest investment, So
yeah, and the biggest thing that came from today when Shane was talking about the offensive line is where he was talking about the intangibles. And this is a lot with what Shane talks about where, and again, these are just quotes, doesn't mean jack, right? But talking about intangibles and talking about a guy's character, I find that Shane's talking about that almost more than like what he sees talent-wise in people. Maybe that's by design, maybe that's on purpose, but I found like he was talking way more about an offensive lineman's intangibles in terms of how he fits in the group of 5, rather than like how strong they are, how physical they are, etc.
Yeah, and I feel like that a lot of that probably goes into their confidence and their ability to pinpoint which offensive linemen have the talent, and the intangibles are what separates them from being good or great or bad. And maybe guys they've drafted in recent years didn't have that or whatever, or signed. And so, yeah, I mean, the offensive line, like they know that's their number one. I mean, their number one task is just, getting a better support system for Daniel Jones. But that starts on the offensive line. And it wouldn't surprise me if they have 4 new starters next year, which is pretty crazy to think about. And it's worked sometimes, other times it hasn't. When you do that, it'll probably take time to get used to. But I mean, it's been so bad the last 2 years that like they need something new in there. So it's going to be interesting to see how they approach it for sure.
I want to correct myself. He did trade for Kevin Zeitler, which when we had Zeitler on, it's like, that everybody hates every single Dave Gettleman move from the fan base except you. And he's like, well, I just want to be a good player and didn't answer the question. Let's see. Justin, is there anything else you want to hit on? I know there's a lot of speculation happening right now.
I have one. So Shane, I feel bad that we're not really touching on anything that Daboll said, but I thought Daboll's was
didn't say anything. That's why.
He had a really nice sweatshirt. I got to see about that sweatshirt. And also it was funny. You guys don't hear the speakers. You don't have speakers or anything. It's just the microphone that they're recording that goes out to obviously.
Actually,
YouTube,
when they talk into it, it projects it pretty loud. Actually, yeah.
Because it was really funny that Daboll, you can hear him breathing directly into the microphone.
He needs to not chew gum while he's at the microphone.
He was chewing something and breathing directly into the microphone every time he was not talking. And I'm like, should I make a compilation video of Brian Daboll breathing heavily into the microphone? But I'm like, I think that's kind of mean, so I'm not going to do that. I don't want to risk the first video of Brian Daboll seeing with my name on top, me making fun of him breathing heavily.
Well,
I wouldn't want to do that.
You need to fill that void from your DG videos.
I know. That's what I was thinking. I was on the train home from New York today. I'm like, should I do this? No.
Joe Schoen had a line about if he gets hit by a car.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, good Lord, what is wrong with Giants GMs and fantasizing about getting hit by buses and cars and shit? One of Dave Gettleman's best line was I don't know, I could get hit by a bus as I walk out here. We don't know what's gonna happen.
He was healthy as a hoss, though.
He was. So even if a bus hit him, he'd be good. So Shane talked a lot about how he kind of, and this is part of his approach, he schmoozes coaches to guys that he has on his radar via interviews. Hey, sit down on an interview with this guy and see, I really like him. So ton of talk on how I feel Joe Schoen has talked a lot about this, about how the front office works with the coaching staff. And this even includes the list of free agents that Joe Schoen has provided, the coaches, and give me your thoughts on that. So what are some of your thoughts on that? And is that different from the previous regime? Is it that this regime is just talking about it and therefore we think that they are about it? Or is it really, hey, this regime is about it and the last regime wasn't, in terms of the communication between front office and coaching staff?
I mean, it's like, so since we're not like, they can all come out on the podium and say we have great communication. Dave Gettleman and Joe Judge were always talking about how great communication was.
They never said how, though.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's just clear that there was a disconnect. When you look at stuff like Matt Peart, you look at Ifadi getting signed and like being put in a position that, you know, he's never played before. Like, he clearly wasn't a fit for that scheme. Like that, it seemed like that was one. I'm pretty sure that was one that like that was a front office signing more than like a coach. Like there's just like a lot of instances where it felt like the communication wasn't quite there. And you at very base level, you know, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll have a good relationship. That Schoen, or maybe it was Daboll, he said something along the lines of, we speak the same language. And so that's important, because like a coach has a certain kind of player that he's looking for. And the reality is the GM has to, you know, create a roster in the coach's image. It's not really the other way around. Like the GM is not going out there and calling plays and like putting the schemes in and stuff like that. So Brian Daboll and his coaching staff have to, you know, go to the scouts in the front office and present to them, like, these are the kind of players I'm looking for at this position. This is the kind of player. And from by all accounts, that's what they've been doing. They've been like, they keep saying that, you know, they've been pressed for time. Like they're kind of in, because it's been so quick turnaround. He just filled his coaching staff pretty recently. So they're kind of behind the 8 ball is what they keep saying. But that's kind of what happens in the first year. But yeah, I think so far it does seem like the communication is good. We'll find out, you know, we won't know. I won't be able to tell you like definitively until like, you know, maybe even the end of the season, whether, you know, it's clear, like, okay, they drafted these guys and they didn't play them at all. Then, okay, there's disconnect there, or they signed these free agents and that guy barely played and then he got cut after training camp, or like if that happens again, then it's like, okay, we're back to that. But I mean, the fact that Schoen and Daboll already had a pre-existing relationship is definitely a good thing for sure.
I had 2 on the beat questions. When Brandon Beane says, you know, Mitchell Trubisky's the guy you want to try and, how fast are you trying to be the first blue check mark to tweet out that?
As soon as he said it, I immediately went to my phone. I try to, I feel like I have a pretty good ear for like insane quotes, like, or not insane, but like ridiculous quotes like that fans are going to like go crazy and start quote tweeting. And so that one's been getting quote tweeted pretty hard, I would say.
Yeah. It's like, it's always a race to be the first blue check mark to do those. Also, any run, we brought it up with Jordan as well. Any run-ins with Russ Salzberg? He whip your ass, you know, try and, you know, threaten you or anything?
He did not go down into the gutter. I do have a funny on the beat anecdote for you guys, actually. So there's this breakfast spot that everybody goes to like every morning here. It's called Cafe Patachu. It's like a famous spot here. It's delicious. Everybody in the NFL goes there. I was getting breakfast, and Joe Schoen walked in and he was getting breakfast with Brandon Beane, actually, and somebody else. And I went up and introduced. I haven't met Joe Schoen because I was off for his intro presser, and I introduced myself. Hey, Zach Rosenblatt, NJ.com. He's like, yeah, I know who you are. We have. He's like, I thought you wore glasses. I'm like, what? How would you know that? He's like, he has like photos of all the reporters that he like studied, so he know what we look like. And so I walked up to him and I said my name. He's like, oh, I thought you had glasses. What the hell's going on? I was like, what? So this guy's like studying. Like I mean, that's a good thing. Like he has the fact that he, you know, I've never met the guy, and he remembered that I was the one that wears glasses or whatever. So,
is your profile picture still you by the ocean?
No. Well, it's like a photo that I think the.
Oh no, it's the
PR,
like a cast.
Not even that. It wasn't even that photo. I think it's like an old photo of me that's on like my press pass. Where I have like thick glasses, and so I don't really look anything like I do now and then anyway. But I just thought it was funny that that's the degree to which he's you know, he's trying to learn us and stuff like that. We'll see if that. I mean, it doesn't matter in reality. I thought that was a funny like little thing because I didn't expect him to know who I was when I walked up to him. So,
here's another. The combine is something that we could get credentials to if we wanted to, but it's like, you know, something we thought maybe next year we could do. It's like I don't have like a burning desire to go watch guys run in a straight line. Do you think for what we do, it would be beneficial for us to go there? Or is it like, yeah, I mean, wouldn't it hurt? But
I think they might have a Radio Row type thing. So I think they might have that. So if
how annoyed are you guys if we show up and start asking questions?
I mean, there's people there that like ask questions. I'm like, how did this person even get a credential? So it happens.
So we'll join that crowd.
So the thing is like, so there's
just ruin our relationship.
There's the podium stuff, and then there's the like the local beat writers get the coach off to the side or whatever. So as long as you're not interrupting the off to the side stuff, then you'd be fine.
Yeah, the off to the side stuff is where we got like the best quotes from, out of you guys. I watched both of them online. I was like, you didn't get it, like the Kadarius Toney.
The Kadarius Toney one was good. Yeah, it's harder on the podium because we're all like we're trying to yell out a question. You have people from like other beats who like somebody wanted to ask about Ken Dorsey and
there's a bunch of Bills questions in there too, which is
I mean, and I get it. Like this is the environment to do that in, but like so for our sake, it's like much better to when we get to like go face to face with them and we don't have to yell out questions and they were saying it's even hard for them to hear us and stuff like that. It's much better. And Shane was good in that environment too.
Word up. All right, that's an interview. Zach Rosenblatt of NJ.com.
Is that how you end every interview? That's an interview.
I usually say that's a show, and I was like, oh, we're not actually ending the show. It's like, as soon as I said it, I was like, that's not how I end an interview.
That's an interview.
Zack Rosenblatt of NJ.com, not NewJersey.com. NJ.com, who, Annie Apple, stated quite
Did I
clearly.
say NewJersey.com?
Yes, you did.
I'm such a bad guy. Swear to God.
All right, Penkin.
To quote, if you want to like think of their work, think of Annie Apple saying, "Fuck NJ.com and Dan Duggan."
I love Dan Duggan getting dragged into it. That made me laugh so much.
I wish he would have had a clapback, which is it's like
Dan wouldn't do that. Yeah.
I know. It's just it is what it is. All right, Zach Rosenblatt, NJ.com, always a pleasure, and that's an interview. All right, thanks, Zach Rosenblatt, for coming on the show. Justin, how are you?
Good convo with Zach. We got to find a TV show that we can both watch together and tweet about it.
Any shows you've been watching lately?
Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, new season 4. Watching that every Friday. Do you even know what that's about, Bobby?
Nope. I don't. I do know I signed up for a Netflix account and I'm trying to get as much stuff in while before I cancel it.
Oh, I watched that Boeing documentary.
Yeah, that was crazy. Listen to Simple Man Radio for that. I watched Chernobyl. Have you seen Chernobyl?
No. Russia took over Chernobyl and acted like it was a big accomplishment. Like, great, you're going to get radiation poisoning.
Well, that's what reminded me. Like, hey, maybe I should go watch the Chernobyl thing. And then I went and read a fact or fiction article on it, and it just seemed like a lot of propaganda for nuclear stuff. But also, it's like I don't know, so I'm going to trust it. But it's pretty crazy stuff that happened. That's wild. Freaking nuclear crap, pissing me off. Anything else we can do to stall time because you're in a rush to go somewhere?
Yeah,
and
no,
let's
annoy
you.
Let's not do that. Going to have an interview with Bleeding Blue, and Bobby's trying to stall.
All right, we appreciate you guys. We'll see you on Friday. We'll do some combine roundup. We're gonna try and get someone on the show.
You keep on saying combine roundup, but it's just going to start. It is not going to be a combine roundup episode. If anything, it's going to be a combine kicking off episode.
I'm trying to end this show, and you just won't shut up. Listen to Simple Man Radio, by the way, on Thursday. God. Because I have a take, and it's about your damn dog, Mikey. All right, we appreciate you guys. We'll see you on Friday, and we'll see you on Simple Man Radio on Thursday. Enjoy the combine. Until then, I forgot. Let's go Big Blue.